Well, welcome to migrating data and services to the AWS cloud. And are we going to just talk about AWS? Because it's a little bit more universal, right, Steve?
Well,
we'll concentrate on AWS a little bit.
Experience with both. We'll talk about both.
Yeah, we're willing to talk about other things. But with us, we have Steve Mackey. He's the president and CEO of SSI. We were going to have Ryan Baglow with us, but apparently he is COVIDized for the second time. Did I hear that right?
He's pretty sick. I am not Ryan.
He's not. That's right. That's April.
She's not feeling well either.
Yeah, he's not doing real well. We talked with him last night. We were hoping that he'd be able to make it, but he cannot make it today. I'm Dave Lowe. I'm the GovBrief host. And we want to welcome a whole ton of different agencies. Love these interagency briefings because we get to be able to dialogue and share information and go back and forth. And with you guys, you can see there's a ton of different organizations here. We appreciate all that you do, and we welcome you here. We have a couple of folks that filled out the best briefing ever. Anthony from Census. The cold my 7-year-old gave me went away. Oh, I don't know if that's going to work, Anthony. I have no idea. And Ryan and you are in the same boat, it might be. So Ann from FEMA, I learned about cost saving models. Hey, Steve, what about cost saving models? We're going to talk a little bit about that.
We're going to address that.
Talk about that. Yep. From Derwin from the VA, strategies for successful implementation and crossover data with minimal interruption of service related to my web application. Are we going to talk about successful implementation and crossover with minimal interruption, Steve?
You betcha.
You bet.
Yep.
And Don Chez from Education OIG, they discussed G-invoicing. I am not sure what that is. I don't know if we're going to dive into that, but I think we'll probably be able to help in some form or fashion. Kip from the FAA, I can provide some clarity for executive management. Will let us know if we have any clarity or more clarity needed, Kip. And from FEMA says, please spend time on avoiding oversubscription. Oversubscription is a big issue, right, Steve?
Yes, and we will talk about that.
We will talk about that. Henry from CBP, I will be able to submit my cloud needs to multiple service providers. Will I be able to submit my cloud needs to multiple service providers? I do believe the answer is yes, you can. And Laurie from Census, S3 buckets and sharing across east-west availability. Wow, that's a detailed question. Steve, do we know about S3 buckets?
Enough to know that S3 buckets are available globally. If you're talking about replicating them between different zones for geographic, yeah, I mean, we can take that offline. But
yeah, no, one way or the other. And Kip with the FAA, secure containerization of data at rest. That sounds like another one that we can take offline. But we know that these things can happen. If you would like to participate, it is simple. You can chat, you can raise your hand, you can do the Q&A, or you can send stuff right to the info at ssihq.net. And April, who is also here, say hi, April.
Hey, everybody.
And that she's not Ryan, as we said earlier.
Not Ryan.
April will be glad to be able to answer those or direct to the people that will be able to answer those. If you've been living under a rock and you have no idea how Zoom works, if this is your first time on Zoom, this is how you use it. You can go up there and you can select side by side, make us bigger or smaller as you would like. You have full control and you can participate. A little bit about what's going to happen here. Introductions and briefing controls, just did that. Why are we here? We're going to talk about exactly how we got here, cloud migration challenges, and some of the factors that need to be addressed in order to get you where you want to go. A couple of sample projects with some agencies that were very successful, right, Steve?
Yes.
Some success stories there.
Absolutely.
And get to your questions and answers, and then get you out of here. Included in this, I'm gonna open this chat up. I'm going to do this, make sure it goes to everybody. I'm going to paste in links to the briefing presentation, the SSI capabilities and sample scope of work that you can use as some of the framework to get you started. Quick disclaimer, this event is not endorsed by GSA, although you guys are GSA contract holders, or any other agency, and provided to you, the audience, for informational purposes only. And your participation in this briefing is voluntary, and you can engage and it's not an indication or endorsement to purchase from any vendor, including you, SSI people. So real quick, we do all that so that we can actually communicate according to GSA, actually. All right. So why are you here today? I'm new to this cloud thing. We're planning a cloud migration. We're in the middle of a cloud migration. We have some oversubscribing cost savings issues, or my boss made me come. Somebody, and you can choose as many as you want there. Somebody has to be a Weisenheimer and choose why your boss made me come. And while they're answering that, Steve, tell us a little bit about SSI located in Northern Virginia and what you've been up to the past 15 years.
Oh, I'm happy to. Well, we've been around in the Northern Virginia area for 15 years, as Dave said. We're headquartered in Manassas Park, southwest of the city, about 16 miles. We've enterprise IT, cyber engineering, enterprise architecture kind of focused firm working on sort of top level IT. We've got a ISO 9001 quality cert, and we're NIST compliant for security and whatnot on our systems. And our CPARs have been excellent. We've been at DLA for a long time. We're supporting defense intelligence community agencies as well as Fed Civil. We're service disabled, veteran owned, small, and hub zone small business. We've got GSA Schedule 70 contract and C40 next gen contract and JETS. We're a sub on 2 different JETS teams, current incumbent, supporting a couple of different task orders, helping DLA manage their enterprise IT. So.
That is fantastic, and exactly why you're here. And we're going to, speaking of some of the agency challenges we were looking at before, as you think about this, Steve, the first thing is figuring out why are you going to the cloud. I want to share this real quick with you, because I don't know if you were watching the poll, but I want to share this results. There's a whole bunch of people here that are new to the cloud world. A lot of folks planning, some of them are in the middle, and then oversubscribing. They're the folks that we know that are already in the cloud, right, Steve?
Yep. And
yep, because that's the kind of thing you start thinking about after you're there. So, but yeah, getting into the planning, great that a lot of folks are here, either just getting started or getting into planning. That's a great place to be. And the operational impact of migration. What are those? Steve, take us through it. Security.
Well, you got to think about security, obviously. We always got to think about security. Performance, like, is my application is it designed to work well in the cloud? And then cost is, it's really significant. The ongoing cost is a different bullet there, because this isn't like giving blood where you go and give 1 pint and the thing clicks over and says, okay, we're done, pull the needle out. The needle stays in and you keep paying. And if you don't have your finger on the pulse of what your costs are, we'll talk about that.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about. And there are folks that actually had that as part of the issues that are already there. So good to know from people that are already there to be able to give feedback to the people that are coming and planning in this. So how did we get here? We got here from initiatives. First of all, Steve Van Rokel, US CIO, came out with the cloud first and drove that into to the agencies, requiring the agencies to evaluate safe, secure cloud computing options before they did anything else. So that was the push back in 2010. 2017, we had EO 13800, which dealt with the modernization, also continuing to press there. And then we moved from cloud first to cloud smart as things really started to gin up, and you had more and more availability of cloud to you and your agencies. But real important to assess your applications, started to talk about discarding the applications that you no longer need and optimizing the ones that you need now, either on premise or in cloud or some hybrid thing, right? So if you want to know who the top 10 are, here they are. These are FedRAMP approved, authorized, right? Already authorized to be able to service federal agencies. And you can see there's a couple of Amazons up there. You got 3 Microsofts, you got a Google up there. So you got a bunch of folks that have the capacity to do it. On the right-hand side, you can see how many implementations they already have with agencies. So you're not the first ones here into the space. You guys can take advantage of the subject matter experts that have already done this and help you get to where you want to go. Right, Steve?
Yep. Fine.
So let's ask them this real quick. where are you in implementing cloud? We know a whole bunch of folks that are in the thinking about it probably, or just getting started. But I also want to know, after you get there, what's your experience from 1 to 10? You got no cloud in sight. It's terrible. And it's not working at all the way to you're already in the troposphere. I was actually going to do a lesson on different types of cloud here, but it was a little bit too much information, even for me, to try to talk about Nimbus and cumulonimbus and all that. So, but there we go. Terrible, no cloud in sight. Wow, a lot of folks having trouble here, Steve-O. A lot of folks. Love it. Appreciate your honesty, first of all. Love that. And we'll keep it. So in addition, participation is easy. Do we have any questions? I have one from Lori. I heard that AWS not have TIC 3 in place yet. Is this true? If true, when will TIC 3.0 be in place? Want to take that one offline, Steve?
I think I'm aware of the standard change and the OMB requirement, but we have an AWS engineer that works for us who's not on the call today, but
yeah. Ryan was supposed to be here, and he had to bail because he's sick. Can you believe that? Can you believe that, April?
Can't believe it.
At the time.
Yeah, timing's everything, right? If you can't get up, it's kind of hard to be on. All right, I'm gonna close that down. Appreciate that. That's good. That's good information for us. So five migration components that you want to talk about here, Steve. Take us through these.
Well, this is sort of like a project management sort of approach toward how you're going to do this. The first thing you need to, we're going to talk about assessment, developing your plan, addressing security, some things you got to think about when you're addressing security. Performance is always something you got to think about that has a lot to do with design, and then cost.
Yep. And then we'll go dive into each one of those. And when you're thinking about cloud migration, if you think about things that absolutely hit you in a brick wall, you got those on the right-hand side. And then on the left-hand side, you have the force multipliers that can help you actually get this done a whole lot faster. And we're going to talk about an implementation that you guys didn't take 6 weeks to do, but the switchover was 6 weeks and it was seamless, right?
Right.
Yep. And that was one that was on the green. So take us through this a little bit. Tell us about these inhibitors, poor planning and bad system design being some of the things that you run into and knocking your head against the wall.
Well, smart people are sometimes, one smart guy's worth 10 normal soldiers, right? So getting the subject matter expert on your team to help you out, and we'd like to think that that's what we help provide in our areas of expertise. It can really be significant help. FedRAMP vetting of all the cloud providers and making sure that they meet all of those requirements that you have to punch to be a FedRAMP certified provider and service is another. It's like they've done the work for you. There's lots of tools available to help you do that migration, and making good use of the tools that industry's already developed can be hugely helpful. We'll talk about those in a little bit. On the resistor side of things, not having enough information can really hold you back if you don't really understand what you have or what you need or what you're going to turn into. Fear and change management can be a significant resistor. Just fear, uncertainty, and doubt. FUD, like they talk about.
Yeah, that's right. The FUD factor.
That does hold agencies back just because they don't want to change.
Yep.
And then poor planning and bad design can really ruin your day. So we advocate, doing a good plan, doing a good assessment. We'll talk about that.
And the more you do up front, the better off it is on the back end. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. A pound of planning is worth.
That's right.
Remediation.
And we all have to know where we are, what's happening today, what's really happening, right? What is the current environment? So take us through this process here, Steve, for identifying where you are and through it and through the tools that you can use.
Yeah, there are just so many excellent tools available in the commercial market now. Many enterprises are already running them, but you really need to have something to collect all the data on what you have. Servers, application, networking devices, connectivity. Some of these tools, like Turbonomics, for instance, can actually go out and take a look at it and give you run a cost on, what's this going to cost up in the cloud? Or if it's in the cloud already, how much is it costing you? Amazon's got a bunch of services already built in. The others on the left are, I'm not the SME on these tools. Ryan was, and he's not here today, but suffice it to say, using a decent tool, you can do a heck of a lot of data collection and then amass that data for analysis and help you really define what your current capabilities are, and then look at your forecast your requirements going forward.
Yep. And then once you know where you are, then you can create the map, right?
You
to
need
get
to
you where you want to go.
You need profound knowledge about your current environment and current load, application load and usage load. If you know that, one server is running at 20% 5 days a week, and then on Friday it goes to 90%. That's important information to know. So you're not buying this much server every day of the week and only using this much, that will be oversubscribing. You also kind of need to look at what can go to the cloud and what should not go to the cloud. And that gets into some application architecture things, things that just won't go. Like, for instance, just case in point, one of our customers was Department of State, and they run a really thick client to print passports because they have a proprietary printing mechanism, and the drivers are proprietary, and they can't host that in the cloud. So, that's an enterprise application for them. Makes a lot of money for us, selling passports for the fees. But you just got to really understand your application environment and your services, and know what can be put up there and what can't.
Yeah.
And that's assessments necessary to do that.
Yep. And that gets you to your planning phase where, number one, get the requirements, using what you did in your assessment so that you know what your requirements are, so that then you can start your planning process, right?
Yep. And sometimes when I hear requirements, I think acquisition, want. But if you go out in the commercial world and you talk to somebody about who's going to build an application, they may not use the word requirements, but they build what do I need, whatever my needs. And that's what you're talking about. There is some government want about it, but it's good, sound project planning is to understand what are my needs. And then building capacity planning, looking forward, anticipating growth or reduction in those requirements and needs. And then big advocate here of doing, and it's not just because I went out and got my MBA, big advocate of an analysis of alternatives. I can tell you enterprise class agencies that have gone to the cloud without doing any math. They just were told the base is closing. You're losing your building, move the data center into the cloud. And that was their business case. But if you don't look at the cost involved, you could end up with an interesting funding situation. And it's not all or nothing. It could be status quo for a while. It could be hybrid. It could be hybrid until things age out and then go all in, or a combination of all those. And of course, you need to look at those risks, benefits, and costs.
Yep. And once you're embodying that, right, and you're saying, okay, is it terrible if something doesn't go to the cloud? Well, it really depends on what the application is. You mentioned Department of State. That's a single. There's so many little applications that just don't belong there. And we see it all the time. So appreciate that insight. And then we start to get into one of the biggest issues that we've seen. This is never going to go away. It's the secure is being able to lock things down and protect your agency. And there's some really important components of this to know about your security, because you can't outsource risk, right?
Yeah, exactly. I love that phrase. If it's classified, there's options with Amazon C2S, which CIA has procured for the intelligence community and DoD and those that need it. High availability. How many nines do you need in availability? 99.999. Disaster recovery is a significant security kind of question or issue. Like one of the questions about S3 regions, or where are those? Where's the data actually physically sit? Industry standard is don't put all your data on the same power grid. And then resiliency against cyber attacks. Ransomware is a significant concern nowadays.
Huge.
When you're in the cloud, you're still, it could be bad. If somebody hacks into your Exchange server and deletes your, or into your Azure environment and deletes your trash box, and then starts, the one thing that we didn't make on this slide is everybody should plan to have some sort of a backup for their data, so that, God forbid, a ransomware attack did come in and start encrypting your files. You're not having to shell out cryptocurrency to get your data back, and because that's a real risk and threat these days. Diversity, big issue, not just in the news and societal, but it's a cloud platform kind of question. And one of the questions wisely asked was, can I put my services in more than one cloud environment? And the answer is, yeah, you could. You just have to do more integration. Azure is not the same as AWS. Connectivity, diversity, got to have more than one pipe in and out, and probably from more than one ISP or telco. And geographic diversity. You don't want everything on that side of the fault line in California.
And to your point, Steve, all of these are encapsulated on why the cloud platform operates the way that it does, because it has multi-home for your connectivity. Geographically, it can be around the world if you need it around the world, right?
Both Amazon and Microsoft have done a really good job of addressing all those kinds of major enterprise class questions about where's my data? Is it only in CONUS? Is it, East Coast, West Coast, is in their power grids? They've done a good job, I think, of offering those kinds of pick and chooses, so that, GovCloud's not a bad, is actually a really good solution. It's well designed.
And I like this. This is a good point you have here.
The last one, standard configurations out of the box, just taking the cellophane off, oh, we're good to go, is the homework's not done yet. You got to go in and take those standard account names and change them so that you don't have admin with password as the password to still get in, and then build scripts off of that. And then, later when you realize, oh, we got to change that password, you break your processes. So those kinds of
Steve, not that anybody here would ever have that problem. Just saying.
Bad idea. All right. What's next?
So there you go. So
what I love,
go ahead.
I like your description of this slide. What's inherent, what's not inherent. The FedRAMP, there's certain things with a FedRAMP certified service, like controls and cyber protocols and all those things that you've got to do to be able to check all the boxes for FedRAMP. They're inherent.
Yeah, 295 of them, matter of fact.
Yeah, but there's some things that are not inherent. Like,
that's right.
What are your policies? What are your agency policies? What are your application-specific risks? Human error. Those things, just because you're on FedRAMP doesn't mean all of a sudden you're secure any more than if you buy Delta Crosspoint as a company, you're not automatically DCAA certified. It's the humans and the processes that those humans use make the whole thing secure. So it's helpful to think about what's inherent and what's not inherent.
That's right. And being involved in some of the original discussions with NIST back in the 2000s, in knowing some of that, the FedRAMP qualifications are not the end all and be all for anybody. As soon as you start throwing your application on there, the rest of it may be 80%, 90% even. And if it's COTS environment, it may be even closer to 100%, but eventually you're going to get down to your agency policies and how people are interacting with that. Because we all know, like phishing, for instance, phishing is not an agency problem. It's a human issue problem, because if you click the link, doesn't matter where you are, a lot of times you could really be in trouble, right? So, and just throwing that out from a security standpoint. Then we get to a place, once you're there, right? You made the decision, you got your thing locked down, you got all your applications. Now we're talking about performance. A lot of performance benefits from the cloud when it's done right?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Unfortunately, with the government building their own applications for some like DoD's former CHCS2 or ALTA program, the electronic health record for DoD, was sort of an example of not really a great application to be cloud-based because of the way it was designed. Because all of that medical data to include imagery, which are huge files, and are all up in the cloud. And for a clinician to enter, a blood pressure and pulse, you had to pull the entire record down from the cloud across all those pipes in your last mile, and then put it on a local machine. And then, you enter a couple of digits for data, and then it's got to go all the way back up to the cloud. It wasn't a great design. DoD is re-engineering that, by the way. But you kind of got to be aware of how well your application functions and whether or not you want to put stuff way up there. And, if it has to come back down to some big thick client that's got to manage it locally. If you can just support just a vision of a desktop up in the virtual cloud, that's one great way to get around that problem. But application design can really drive performance.
And again, not all applications belong there or work well in the cloud, right? And then we get to the place where we start to shell out the cash, right?
Yeah. The thing is, you really got to know how much it's going to cost, and it takes some time with a spreadsheet, and some forecasting and calculations. The one thing you really don't, for those of you who sign checks for the government or contracts, you do not want to run up against an Anti-Deficiency Act violation. You don't want to go sign up for some service that think it's going to be a $500K a year, and it turned out to be 3.5 million because you didn't anticipate. Oh my gosh, I had no idea that we were using that many MIPS or processing cycles. There are simple monitoring methodologies. We've implemented them before. We'll talk about it in one of the case studies about how you can monitor your costs and forecast your expenses and reduce your costs significantly if you just keep track of what's going on.
Which several people here already indicated that's one of the biggest problems once they're there is making sure that you're right sized, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. You don't want
All right.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm real quick. Let's see. Cost models. Great question. And Hershey just asked about cost models. We'll talk a little bit about that and anything you would like to talk about in just a minute, I promise. And we will get to those for you. All right. So let's talk about these case studies. There's 3 different ones that we're going to review today. 2 of them you can identify sorta, and one of them you can't even say the agency name. So there you go. Let's talk about the first one, NGA GIS.
That was an exciting project. We moved over 250 applications from legacy hosting environments into a private cloud. There was a significant amount of work that went into building the hosting environment for that. Today, fortunately, because of Amazon and AWS, C2S, and Azure, that hosting environment's already baked. It's already there. So the hotel's ready there with Mint on the pillow. But what we did was had a process for data collection and engineering and planning and socialization, basically getting the application owners on board and the user advocates on board with the idea that we're moving this from Timmy's comm closet in Bethesda into a data center that's going to be a private cloud.
And everybody always communicates so well, right?
I tell you, customer relationship management was huge.
Oh, I'm telling you.
It solved a lot of problems. And then, of course, you got to build and engineer a test, run a pilot, make sure that there's functionalities all there, identify the vulnerabilities, and then mitigate them. And then, update your risk management framework paperwork. Back in the day, it was CNA paperwork for an IATO. And then do a side-by-side validation. Get them both running next to one another, on-prem, and then a cloud-based one. And then do scheduled cutover at, some evening or weekend time to make sure that there are absolutely no ripples when you transfer the load. The outcome of that for us was a 6-week process to move an application from the first meeting with the application owners asking for data to cutover. 6 weeks and no downtime.
This is a big deal. This is a big deal. Now, it didn't take you 6 weeks to do the whole project, right?
No, it was several years.
Several years.
Yeah. But that's because they had 257 applications
That's right.
that were connected to 16 different intelligence agencies. It was complicated, but the process itself, once you grabbed an app and you were going to move it, took a month and a half.
Yep.
And,
fantastic.
And the cool thing about it was we had a homogenized security environment on the end that was compliant with all 16 agencies. And we had increased mission assurance. It was like a, 5 nines data center that was, never went down.
Mission critical, right? All of these.
Every one of them. They were combat support. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the really cool part about this was the CIO for this agency used to bring all the CIOs from the Intel community over and brag about, I can tell you how much my IT costs by the pound.
By the pound.
By the pound. He could say, I know how much this app costs because they were capturing all the data. And, it was really cool. And you can do that today in the cloud. The commercial clouds provide you with that same capability.
Absolutely. And that's just gets you to your cost visibility. So the next one here is a DoD agency. We may or may not reveal, but go ahead.
We've just finished migrating the data for 26,000 users from on-prem 30 data centers across the world into the cloud and into Microsoft Azure based NetApp storage. And that is now, we basically leveraged industry capabilities of NetApp in the cloud to achieve the first ever site-to-site failover capability, DR capability for this agency. So now they've got stuff replicated, and their recovery time, you no longer have to scramble around and load tapes and bring it back. It's all available pretty much instantly. A couple of minutes for recovery time. Increased mission assurance, closed numerous data centers and comm connections and all that kind of stuff, and eliminated tape from the entire agency and offsite storage. And no more Iron Mountain contracts to store tape to collect dust somewhere.
Yep. And this is a big, to your point, this is one of your sweet spots too with SSI is the DR, right?
Yeah, we've been doing enterprise data management for 15 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the other one, we can't say who it is. You can make your own guess if you want. It's entirely up to you. But go ahead, tell us about this one. This one has to do with the Amazon.
This one basically assessed and audited and optimized services that were being hosted in the C2S cloud.
Yep.
Which is, for those who don't know, it's in the press. Amazon contracted with the CIA as the executive agent to provide cloud-based storage at the TS and above level. That involved doing an assessment of the out-of-the-box configurations, which identified a number of vulnerabilities. If you didn't remember, change admin to something else, and mitigated those risks and developed, and then went through and developed run books, to allow engineering and administrators to go through and do the same thing the same way every time to make sure the result was always positive and desired expected result, basically quality management. Developed a monitoring capability. This is really cool. About to identify oversubscribing, so that when you have that 20% utilization all week long, and then you go to 90, you don't spend 100% all week long when you don't need to. And what we were able to do by measuring the utilization of tables and indexes on a database environment, we went out and just basically with existing AWS services that we tapped into, because we have a former Amazon employee working for us, tapped into all these things and measured when have these been used last, and then realized, well, we got 3 dozen database tables and indexes, but we only use 12, a third of them. So we're not going to spend money on processing for all of them when we only have to spend this much. So we're usually able to generate 40% savings on the database spend for that agency, which is a huge data intensive data.
Yep. And Ann, I think this gets to yours. If you're available, I want to pop Ann Hershey. I just invited you to talk, and you had some questions about the data, the cost models, right? Are you there?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Who are you with first, Ann?
So I'm with FEMA, and I'm in the Data Network Services Division under this CIO.
Excellent.
And as an investment on the CPIC side of things, I own the network.
Yep.
So looking forward to, what we can see, what we might be able to move to the cloud. But prior to joining this team, years ago, I managed FEMA.gov, and we had a subscription service to Akamai. And so I'm always concerned about what if we oversubscribe whatever it is. And I haven't gotten into the cost side of things. It's in the engineering shop in our studio where cloud-based solutions are happening. But I am a contract officer representative, and I do anticipate getting involved in some of these things. And I'd like to avoid some of those situations. I mean, you mentioned the Anti-Deficiency Act. And, we could have gotten into that situation when we ran out of money for our Akamai. We said, well, just don't serve up our pages anymore. And no, we don't work like that. You send it, it's like the gas pump. As long as, somebody's pulling that trigger, the gas is flowing. And we didn't have a way to shut that off and avoid a possible anti-deficiency situation.
Yeah.
So I don't know what safeguards you can advise me on, to have that language either in the contract or, in practical sense, what kind of configurations am I looking for? I took some of the basic AWS migration classes, and I know enough not to want to really be in that business.
Yeah.
All right. Fantastic. I appreciate that. And I think one of the things that we might be able to do is Steve, how much does it charge for you to just talk to Ann offline and see what she's got?
I love to have conversations. I mean, that's all,
It's
I never
free.
turned down an opportunity to have a conversation.
That's right. We'll make sure that happens, Ann. Okay.
Well, sure. And, I might ask to bring in some other people just to, see. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe it's just my own lack of knowledge that I have this concern. It might not even be a concern at this point. So
Here.
I don't think you're the only one. And the more you get into it, Steve didn't create that bullet on that slide by accident, right, Steve?
No, yeah, no, and it really helps to have somebody who work on the commercial side of that, so they know they can help you ask the tough questions and say, I don't want just the salesperson in the room when we negotiate this contract. I want your engineering dude or dudette to be there so that we can ask you hard questions, because one of the things you got to watch out for is you don't want them just running the clock up and just letting something run and dump terabytes of data into your monitoring. Oh, monitoring is good because it'll help me figure out what's going on. Well, monitoring can end up running your clock up, and ending up dumping a bunch of data into log files, and then you're paying for the storage too of the log files that may or may not be useful to you. So It's really helpful to have the engineers in the room and ask the really tough questions, and say, how am I going to make sure that you don't disensanguate me when I give this pint of blood? I don't want to be drained dry.
Yeah. Love it. Thanks, Ann, very much. Great. We'll make sure we get that for your team. Very good. There's a hand raised, Laura. I'm going to get to you in just a second. Takeaways here so that we'll take some more questions in just a minute. I promise. Steve, take us through these takeaways.
I was a big fan of Deming when I went through quality management training with the Navy. And one of the things that Dr. Deming used to say was, you have to have profound knowledge of your processes in order to be able to manage them in a quality fashion. And, profound knowledge means like knowing everything about your stuff and how you make your widgets or whatever it is. That's one of my big takeaways here is knowing your as-is capabilities and your requirements. What do you have to have? What do you have currently? And then what are you going to require in the future? And then, intelligently planning your to-be environment, not just running out of the building because somebody blew a whistle and said fire, but, plan where you're going to go and do it in a smart fashion. And some of that could be, leveraging your current as-is environment until it ages out and then migrate in a convenient way. Step off that. A little bit. Like I have this picture in my head of Jack Sparrow stepping off the skiff just as he gets to the dock, and the skiff goes under the water. Sorry, I don't know where that came from.
I don't know where that came from either, man.
And then be mindful, performance, security, cost, and last, I'd like to harp on this a little bit as conflict of interest. As we all need to be aware of who we're talking to across the table and what motivates them. If you're talking to a big integrator that's providing you with subject matter expertise, staff augmentees at full time, like some, I don't know, big integrator, and you're asking for recommendations on what to do that might impact their labor base, they might not be the best person to ask. Getting an independent third-party voice in there that doesn't have a stake in the game on no matter what the decision is.
Always a good idea.
Large defense contractor ABC is providing you with all your subject matter expertise in your CIO shop. I would not go to them for recommendations on major changes that could end up impacting their revenue stream and reducing their footprint. It's this basic FAR 9 whatever it is, conflict of interest kind of thought is getting an independent voice is really, really helpful.
Always a good idea.
Yeah.
Third party, independent, always a good idea. Awesome. And we will get to the rest of the questions in just a minute. First, let us know if and when you expect a cloud services requirement. Is it right away? Is it all the way into not even sure? That's okay. And if you would like to discuss an assessment, a pilot, a specific issue, let us know. We'll make sure that you get what you need in order to get to where you want to go. All right. So I got to open this back up again. I saw the hand raised. How did I get there? Oh, there we go. All right, Lori, hold on. Lori, you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can. So who are you with, Lori?
I am with the U.S. Census Bureau. Like Ann, I am currently in charge of census.gov. And the 2020, but that's no longer here anymore. So we are looking at extending our infrastructure into the East-West. A lot of the communications questions that you saw in there that you like to take offline is the Trusted Internet Connectivity 3.0 going to be implemented? And the reason why I'm asking that is that without that, it also has to come back through MTIPS, back to our buoy location, back out to West. So you can see there's a performance impact there if we have to route traffic all the way back to the East Coast to go all the way back to the West,
Right.
i.e. that discussion about the 2 gigabyte X-ray coming up and down. So we've got all those traffic patterns. The second thing is that if I'm going to do a distributed data center, 3 data centers, essentially East, West, and then our current headquarters,
Mhm.
with Akamai in front with the load balancing, how can we do replications between East and West in an efficient way, which is why the S3 bucket was, can I write it to one node in one availability zone that can replicate across the other availability zones? Yes, I'm getting down in the weeds, but you can see I've already.
You are deep down, Lord.
Yeah, so I've done a lot of planning. I know my systems from top to bottom. I know where and these are the kind of the things. Well, if we're going to put this out there, how do we address these challenges?
Yep.
And these are challenges, and then we looked at PaaS, which is platform as a service for those who don't know. But then you want to go into their own cookie cutter approach, and we're not cookie cutter.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. Make sure you check on their specific issue.
I would love to get our former Amazon employee to answer that question, because he used to run the network in the back end, and he knows how all that stuff's wired together. I'm sure that we can get you a really good answer on that.
And I think the answer with the TIC3 is going to be helpful for everybody, because without that answer, it's kind of like we're going now back to where we already are.
Yeah.
And that's the whole advantage with the TIC3, the trusted internet connections, for those who don't know, because in that way, West traffic goes to West, East goes to East, and then you don't have to do that centralized rerouting all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I know Ann's ear is probably perking up because she's the network person, and that's what the network people should be like. I don't want to do that if I don't have to.
Exactly.
There's a whole lot of that. I don't want to do that if I don't have to.
But system design helps. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, Lori, that was fantastic. We appreciate that. And you will be talking to some other folks that we can put you in touch with. And as I mentioned earlier, you do not have to buy from SSI, but if you would like to, you can see They have a GSA contract, Seaport, numerous other vehicles that you can get to. Service disabled, veteran-owned small business. Thank you for your service, Steve, and your team. Hub Zone, which means that you can get an extra little checkbox on the procurement side of things. And if you'd like to do that, their information is right there. You will get a recap email next week, which includes the briefing presentation, the statement of work that we have right here that I already pasted in, as well as capabilities, a link to the video so that you can share this with all the people that you need to, and one-on-one meetings like with you, Lori and Ann, to address specific issues. And with that, I'm going to say thank you, Steve, for being here and for sharing that information. Great information. And we're not going to call Ryan a bum because he's sick.
No. Say a prayer for him.
That's right. We're going to say a prayer for Ryan. Appreciate you being here. April, I just know one thing. You talk too much.
I know. I can't be Ryan. Sorry. So we will get you, Ryan, and be happy to set up calls where we can get him on those calls to get some additional information for everybody.
Yeah, if there's anything we can do, direct information right here, you can reach out to them. If you need anything from the GovBrief side, be glad to help you with that. But the real experts are Steve and Ryan and April, even though she didn't say very much. Awesome. Well, thanks for being with us. Oh, wait a minute. Let's see if we have one more. Cost models, we did that. Kip, you are welcome, my man.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us, and we will make sure you get what you need. All right, guys?
Thanks
a lot.
everyone.